Hey guys, so I seen the trailer for this movie, Pachuvum Athbutha Vilakkum, a while ago, and it got me pretty excited because the trailer looked really good. The trailer looked like it was a real nice, light-hearted, feel-good kind of movie, maybe even like a coming-of-age kind of movie with some really light, sort of nice moments. Looked like a comedy, looked like there was some drama, but nothing too serious. And most importantly, I saw Fahadh Faasil in the trailer, and that was enough for me to be really excited to watch this movie. And what I really wanted to see was how was Fahadh Faasil going to be in a movie where he's not crazy. Like so far the movies I've seen him in have been a little bit crazy from Fahadh Faasil. Like he's one of my favorite actors in the whole industry so far, and I think he's one of the best actors actually in the industry, for my own opinion. But what I really wanted to see was really just, how would he be in just a more kind of traditional lead role? Something that you can sort of just watch with the family, or like a nice relaxing kind of movie where you don't have to go all in on his crazy character. Nothing over the top, nothing overly dramatic. No murder, no death, no thievery, nothing. Just a nice simple plot. How would he actually be in this kind of role? And I'll say right now, I loved it. He was fantastic in this movie. I enjoyed his performance so much. I really enjoyed the fact that I got to see the comedic side of him. Like he was really funny, because like I've seen elements of comedy in some of his movies that I've seen. I've seen movies like, Tondi Mitulum Dvikshakshium, which I think he had a funny sort of premise in that movie, and other movies as well, such as Kumbalagli Nights, where he also has kind of some comedy. But even in those movies, the comedy is a little bit, it's a bit crazy kind of comedy. It's not like traditional comedy. This movie, he's like a traditional comedian. He has great comedic timing. Obviously, he's got great physical comedy because he's such a great physical actor. I mean, that scene when he's choking on the fishbone and stuff like that, like it's just great. His expressions are so good all the time. So he's a master at that. We know that. But I wanted to just see him without any crazy sort of character behind him, any over the top story. So this was perfect. He was so good. So I'm really surprised that actually they took Fahadh Faasil for this movie, because like it's just something I've not seen of him. It's a kind of movie that I think someone like I was thinking before, like maybe a Dulquer Salam could have played this kind of character, but he has a little bit too much charm. I don't know if he could pull the awkwardness that Fahadh had in this movie, because that's an important part of his character. The only other actor I thought that might have sort of been in this movie might have been someone like a Sobin Shahir, who definitely can do that and is also a comedian in his own right, and he can definitely play that whole awkwardness. He can do that fine, I think. But obviously, I think he's not as big a name as Fahadh Faasil. So interesting. I'd love to know why they actually picked him to do this movie, but I'm really happy for it because I love seeing the side of him, and I hope to see more. As well as the comedic side, I really enjoyed watching him in the really, really touching emotional scenes in this movie, because there were some scenes which really, in this movie, touched you pretty deep. It was a really, deep movie in some ways, and very moving. So the scenes with him, especially when he's starting to get to know, the romantic partner in this movie, Hamshawadi. Yeah, they were really great. And the way that sort of relationship all sort of forms together, the way he just sort of plays in a very childlike manner sometimes, the way they sort of feed off each other is really good. But his expressions, I think in the one scene that really got me was when she's sort of telling him about the situation about, her brother being lost, I guess. He doesn't have to do much in that scene, but just the amount of like pain that he's sort of expressing just through his face, it's so well done. It's really well done. Another scene I think that strikes me is at the end when they have this sort of big fight, and we see him kind of like leave. It's really well done. Like he's really able to use his body, his voice, his expressions. He's very dynamic. He can snap like that very quickly. So I really enjoyed him in this movie. He was so great. And obviously, just the whole chemistry he had with everyone around him was really nice to see. Even, he has scenes with the Amachi, the older lady, which is really touching at times. That whole chemistry, like that relationship wasn't so much. It was there a little bit. It was more like for a plot device than any actual real character. But I think the relationship that he had with the kid for a short stint was really nice. again, I say this movie is really lighthearted and it leaves you with a nice warm fuzzy feeling inside. It's because of scenes like that and moments like that you can just really enjoy. It's a kind of movie that I think you just sort of chuck on in the middle of the day and just kick back and you walk away feeling like you watched a nice movie. It's pretty interesting to me before I get into the movie anymore, because I do want to talk about the movie quite a bit more, but it's interesting. This movie did not really get much of a commercial success. And I think that's because, look, I think this movie is more suited for OTT. Like, obviously, I think watching this in the cinema would have been great. Would have been nice to watch this because some of the scenery and the visuals in this movie are beautiful. And I want to touch on that a little bit more. But essentially, like, the reason why it is a movie that I felt like I didn't need to see in the cinema. And I think that's a challenge going forward with all movies, not just from the Malayalam film industry, from all industries, I think. OTT has become such a normal way of watching movies now. This movie definitely suits an OTT kind of vibe. So I'm hoping this movie might become actually a big hit on streaming, even more than it was in the cinema. But getting onto the movie a little bit more, I talked about the comedy. This movie was so much fun. This movie was fun from start to finish. Now, it's not like a laugh out loud or fall on the floor laughing, crazy kind of comedy movie. It's not like a movie like Roman Cham, which I think is a straight up comedy. And it's, a bit goofy, but still at the same time, very, the comedy is done really well in that movie. This movie is a bit more subtle and it's a bit more the kind of comedy that you sort of, you have a smile throughout the entire movie and you giggle at times throughout the movie. And there are some moments where you just genuinely laugh out loud. I think some of the scenes, and a lot of it has to go to Fahadh Faasil's performance in some of these scenes, but like there's an early scene, I think when he's like, he has to take a leak, he has to take a piss somewhere and he's peeing on the, the lady's fence or something like that. And just the back and forth, hilarious. So well done. There's so many scenes like that. The sort of chemistry between all the characters is so good. Obviously, I've got to give a special mention to the character at the start, his assistant at the Ayurvedic pharmacy. He was so good in delivering so many, funny scenes. Like when he can't speak Hindi and he has to sort of go around. The back and forth between Prashant and him was actually just hilarious. Like, it was so much fun to watch those two just riff off each other. I love when the actors are able to do that, and it just seems so, you can tell these two obviously have a great dynamic and have a great chemistry between them because the conversations were so funny to watch. So yeah, the comedy was so good. It was just, it was situational comedy, but also character-based comedy. So yeah, that's the kind of comedy I like, and everything felt like it was relevant to the plot in some way, So really nice comedy. I also want to touch on the romance in this movie. The relationship, as I mentioned before, between Pachu and Hamshah's Wadi. I thought that might be the best part of this movie, to be completely honest. I thought that was probably my favorite part of the movie. And, there is obviously a big part of this movie about sort of the journey of Nidhi, the girl who they're trying to rescue. I do think that's a really important part, but I think that could have been fleshed out a little bit better. It was done through a lot of flashbacks and exposition, and you never saw the two actually, in a room together that much. Maybe that's why it was lacking a little bit. But I think my favorite part was the romance because I got to see a lot of these two characters, and it was really nice to see Pachu sort of, come to his own because he plays this role where he's such a awkward character, like that's probably the best word for him. He's awkward. Like there's conversations he has which are just strange, like he just sort of will say something like he goes to when he enters the house for the first time, he walks into the room and he asks Hamshah if the person who's the room he's staying in is married or not, and he just goes straight in after. It's awkward, it's weird, but it's funny. A lot of great comedy scenes, like, the whole thing, how he leaves his underwear in the room and has to come back. Oh my God. Like these two were hilarious, watching them two sort of go back and forth. It's probably my favorite part, but aside from the comedy in the romance, I really just like how it wasn't like a silly romance. There was something really genuine about these two coming together, which felt really kind of genuine and authentic. Like, it wasn't like, I thought that maybe they would have used the journey of Nidhi to sort of make them go on the journey together, and that's why they're falling in love. But it wasn't to do with that. That they were kind of separate from that. They had their own sort of path, their own journey that individually they also were sort of going through. Like obviously, Hamsha was going through this, bad relationship she was having with Vivek, who was actually also hilarious in this movie. The amount of insecurity that guy has. So many funny scenes. That scene when they're in the restaurant and he's down on one knee and he's proposing and he switches knees. So funny. This movie's hilarious. I was laughing a lot at this movie. But essentially she has to get to her battles of basically, saying no to this guy and meeting somebody like Pachu, who is unconventional, but is able to just say things at the right time when it's needed. So, it was really nice to see that. It was a real authentic kind of, coming together of this relationship. And the end of this movie, I think, is just so nice. Like, I was actually pretty emotional and happy to see this ending where, Pachu has a decision to make, what is important to him. He's been offered the world. He's been offered the shop, paid off completely if he completes this task, which he does through a lot of adversity, to a lot of action, to a lot of, taking some hits, being stabbed, being bashed up, going through all this trauma to get what he has to. At the end, he has a choice to take the pharmacy, but he says no in the end, almost last minute to basically start living a life with Hamsha is what I think it's implying, or at least, going down that path in Goa. So I really enjoyed that whole dynamic. It was definitely my favorite part of the movie, and that's the part that leaves me the most. I think that's the part I remember the most about this movie. Obviously, I love the story and I love the journey that they went on. The whole Nidhi story was also pretty heartbreaking, just to see what she's been through. And it was kind of a sad tale to sort of see somebody like that get so abused. Some of the scenes with her were really sort of heartbreaking, man. Like they had scenes with her like getting beat up by the nanny and getting there's a scene when she walks outside and there's like a red mark on her face. So it was pretty heartbreaking to see that. It was really in contrast with all the comedy and the lightheartedness that was going on the other side. But I really did enjoy that story as well. But I think what I walk away with is basically the best part was whenever it was to do with Fahadh Faasil as Pachu and alongside Hamsha Swadi, played by Anjana. Those two were really, that was my favorite part of the entire movie. The rest of it is stuff I enjoyed, but I had some issues, I guess, with it, or it didn't leave me as impacted as the romance did in this movie. But on to some other notes quickly before I sort of wrap up. I will talk about the production of this movie. I loved this movie's production, to be honest, because straight away when I started watching it, and it's something that my wife mentioned as we were watching, she says this doesn't feel like a typical Malayalam movie. And that's because it was outside of Kerala. Obviously, most movies I watch, I've been amazed by the scenery and the beauty that they've shown off in these movies. And to show this, the beauty in Kerala is amazing. But I actually really enjoyed sort of stepping out. And this movie just felt different because, they were in Mumbai to start with. They had moments in Kerala, but a lot of the time they were in Goa. Just small things even, just the, the influence of the language coming into the movie and seeing a lot of Hindi being involved. At the start, there's a beautiful Hindi song that's playing and it's like almost a ballad or a tribute towards Mumbai. It's just a nice song, to be honest, and really well done. So it made this movie feel a little bit different. I've heard of another movie called Bangalore Days, which I think might be similar to this movie. But I think it has more of an ensemble cast. But that's also a little bit, it feels like a different from a typical Malayalam movie. It might just be the settings and location that does that. Small things like language have such a big influence on a movie. And this movie just felt different from those. So I really did enjoy that part of this movie, to be honest. It showed us obviously the great visuals of Goa, the forts, the beautiful landscape, the river, breathtaking. So if people did see this in cinema, I can sort of appreciate that side of things. And obviously you got the other side in Kerala. Kerala is one side, you have the other side also in Mumbai, where it's, the hustle and bustle and, this smaller street corners and things like that. We don't spend as much time in Mumbai, but it's just good to get out of, Kerala sometimes. The other thing I really enjoyed about this movie, which might also be a highlight, the music, man. The music is so nice. The music is beautiful. It has some really nice songs and they're all like, like slow paced, melodic, like nice movies you can play on the background and just really enjoy. So I really love the music in this movie. They came about whenever I had to, and they all served a purpose. Like, I think my favorite one might have been the one when I think, the one about the relationship and how they're sort of forming. That song was beautiful. A lot to like about this movie, man. I did really enjoy this movie. It's definitely a movie that I think is going to have a lot more popularity on streaming than it did in the cinema. And that's okay. That's the way things are now, I'm pretty happy that's on Amazon. Very accessible, very easy for outsiders like myself to watch as well. And one more thing I want to mention about the story before I sort of wrap it up is, look, this movie is a 3-hour movie. It's 2 hours 50. Now, when I saw that coming into this movie, I was kind of shocked. I was like, how is this movie going to be almost 3 hours? Like, is it going to be really slow? Is it going to drag? What's the situation here? It turned out this movie's pacing was fantastic. I did not have any issues with this movie in terms of its pacing. I felt like there was so much happening in the story. There were so many twists and turns and so many changes of direction. There's so much that happens in this movie, in the story from start to finish. I never felt it was really ever like it was slow or boring or dragging at any times. Yes, I think they probably could have cut out about 15 or 20 minutes, to be honest. I think the scenes without Fahadh Faasil, to be honest, were probably the ones that had less of an impact than the other ones did. And not to do with the actors or actresses. I think that was fine. But I just think the writing for the storyline and the journey was better than the flashback scenes in this movie. But yeah, look, a lot to like about this movie. I think it's going to be a big hit on streaming services. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely check it out. It's worth watching. I would say it's a movie that's not going to be one that I'm going to remember as one of the best movies of the year. Not that it was bad, but as much as I like this movie, it has a lot of familiar tropes. I think everyone that watches this movie would have watched a movie like this somewhere along the line. So that's why I think it's a great movie. It's a really fun movie, but it's probably not a movie that I'm going to, it's not on the same category as some of the other movies I've seen, especially as of late, which are like, the best of the year and stuff like that. But yeah, look, that'll do it for me. I hope you enjoyed this. If you are new to this channel, do hit that subscribe button. Love your support on this channel we're trying to do. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.